Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, 2026 Priority, Governing AI Usage Across the Project Lifecycle. My name's Etty. I'm a part of the marketing team here at ILX. We'll just give it another minute or so for people to join, and then I'll be handing over to Andy and Emanuela here, who will be taking you through today's presentation. But before I do, there's just a couple of housekeeping bits that I need to run through with you. So you'll notice that you've all come in on mute. I don't believe you have the option to change that, but if you do, please don't. Please do remain on mute. It just makes sure that the session runs a lot smoother and you can all hear Andy and Manny here nice and clearly. We will have a chance to do a Q&A at the end, so we're hoping to leave sort of 15 minutes for that portion of the session. So if you do have any questions as we're going through, just pop those in your question box up in the top right-hand corner. If they're technical, you can't see us, you can't hear us, I will deal with those in the background. But otherwise, if they're about the content of today's session, then we will be handling those at the end. The webinar is being recorded. So you will be shared a link to this via email tomorrow, and it will also be live on our YouTube channel later today. We also like to say give us a follow on social media. So we are active over on LinkedIn and Facebook and Instagram at ILX Group. So you can find us over there. You'll get lots of updates about all of our upcoming webinars, new product launches, anything like that. So today's session is set to take about 30 minutes to 40 minutes. And then, as I said, we will have time for Q&A at the end. So without further ado, I shall hand you over now for the main portion of the presentation.
Hello, everybody. Welcome along to this webinar. I'm Andy West, Senior Training Consultant here at ILX Group, and I shall be working with Manny today to talk about the AI Project Governance Framework as we go through. This is what we're going to cover. The context of AI use, how can it help in projects, the challenges of using AI, where the risks of using AI come from, what do we need to think about if we're trying to put in governance for this, and the benefits. The focus is on governance of AI use in projects, not general use of AI. There will be some polls as we go through the session to gather some reactions and some input from yourselves as we go through. And again, if you've got any more questions, as Etty said, please put them in the chat and we'll try and answer those at the end as we go through. So we'll make a start. I'm actually going to make a start with a poll. And the first poll is, are you or your organization using AI tools in project management? So specifically, I'll just get to see the poll as we go through.
Interesting to see quite varied responses here, Andy.
I was thinking the same thing, Manny. The enterprise-wide does seem to be coming out relatively low compared to individuals that are diving in, dipping a toe in the use of AI.
And some even no, not yet.
Yeah, not yet. Yeah. We want to avoid this. That is quite interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Quite interesting on quite a number of people looking at we intend to as we go through. Brilliant. Thank you very much indeed for those. So that does allow us to understand what's going on, what's actually happening. So there is a degree of use of AI, and it's to put that into context. So if I start having a look at this, and hopefully those people are going, no, we're not thinking about it, maybe we'll deal with some of your fears today and make it not quite so scary. If I start with the kind of traditional approach, we think about project management, okay? This is how it's been undertaken. Those lots of manual processes. We have things for risk, we have things for change and issue management and configuration management. We have people who've actually got to do a lot of these administration tasks. And therefore, as project managers, either they've got a lot of admin for us, or we need a team of people to help us go and do it as we through a project. All decisions are going to be human-led. We're going to, as a project manager, look at what's the day-to-day, what things am I going to do today to keep the project going. Our sponsors, our steering group, making decisions about, do we carry on, yes or no? And problems, or we come to them and go, oh, we tend not to anticipate. Unless we're very, very good at risk management, and we can get rid of all of those, we tend to be much more reactive. But Manny, if we focused on the AI approach, how's this going to benefit us?
Yeah, and this is the thing, you know, Andy, over the years I've worked with project managers, program managers, and so on, and they really complain about the, you know, the second point here on your slide is admin intensive, and quite often they don't have time to do lessons learned review, never mind updating issue logs, etc., because it just takes so long. And so the great thing now with the various AI tools that are available, a lot of these things can be either sped up or automated depending on the degree of AI adoption. And so the great thing is with AI use across the project lifecycle, we can actually automate some of the administration, simplify some of the administration. And the great thing about that is it frees up project program managers, change managers to focus more on what they don't often have enough time to do, which is stakeholder management, the people side of project management.
And so it's kind of using the cognitive abilities where they really need to be used, rather than having to waste time doing on the mundane, essentially, which is necessary.
Yeah, definitely. I think you have a slide to talk about how AI is used in different ways in projects. But essentially, this is, you know, we look and looking at the poll results as well. We have varying degrees of AI adoption. Some of you are just starting or not starting yet. Others say it's enterprise-wide. We are using it enterprise-wide. And then you have a great slide here where you can talk about sort of the different types of AI and how it's been used, Andy.
And it's what's interesting here is we kind of hear about the big things. You know, people comparing about, are we going to use ChatGPT, or we're going to use Gemini, we're going to use Copilot, but they're very much in the generative AI kind of space that we can use for kind of creative things. But it's all the other sorts of tools that we have, and it's, are we limiting ourselves? Are we opening ourselves up and thinking about, well, what is it that we actually need us to go and do? I quite like the idea of the kind of computer vision, visual data for project monitoring, that can pick up all of those things and make some sense of it. So the multimodal, you know, we can put a lot of different data in there, and it turns into something that makes it much more understandable. And of course, this is enhancing our ability to communicate effectively in terms of progress and forecasts. But it's finding the right tools for organizations. And it's asking the right questions, I think, about it. So we're not going to be here to recommend any of those sort of things, but it is very much, have we considered all the things that we want to speed up, that we need to consider where the advantages are going to be?
That's right. And we're talking about governing AI in projects, right? I would imagine a lot of people here that responded to the poll in terms of the varying use of AI tools. I would imagine there's a spectrum of some people just using Gen AI type tools like ChatGPT or Copilot or an enterprise GPT. So it's, you know, safer under the hood. And those are great because they can help us across the project lifecycle, whether we're drafting business cases, project charters, drafting risk logs, all these different things. Really fantastic there. There'll be some organizations that have increased levels of AI adoption and automation, some more agentic AI agents embedded in some of their software tools. But I would say regardless of the degree of adoption maturity, what I find lacking generally is governing practically how it's used in projects and saying, okay, well, we've got Copilot or it's our own enterprise GPT, we've ticked the governance box. That doesn't cut it. There's more to it than that.
Yeah, and this becomes part of the challenge, or when we're looking at new tools. And it's always been the way that whenever, as organizations, we're going, right, we need to do some project management, we need to do this better. What are we going to implement? How are we going to do it? Do we have some kind of control over it? And so, you know, is it being done appropriately? When I first started working for ILX, lots of organizations didn't have a kind of formal project management framework. And so you started going, well, should we do this in a repeatable way? Are we doing it properly? What do we need to understand about a project management framework? And now we're talking about enhancing that framework with AI tools. And it's again the same thing of, are we making the right decisions? Are we making it work for us? Is it doing the things that we need to be done, rather than just we seem to be using it in an ad hoc kind of way?
Yeah. And I think, again, you know, if you look at the slide here, you've got, is it being used effectively, efficiently, and ethically in your first point there? That's quite right. So AI governance is not just about, you know, governing the data that the tools have access to and ethical use. Governance also encompasses efficient and effective use. So we're making the best use of the tools. And, you know, good governance encourages curiosity and collaboration with AI, not just, you know, strict control and making sure that we are controlling how it's being used.
Yeah, or not being used. If people are going, I'm terrified of this, I'm terrified of this, we're not going to play. And what's an interesting one here is always that as organizations, we like repeatable things. We like things to be done in a kind of standardized, controlled way. And therefore, you know, are we using it properly? Are we using it effectively and efficiently? Is it being planned? Have we got agreement on this? Is there some kind of oversight of how we're using it, rather than just people are kind of doing it in a way, shape, or form? And this starts to come into the question of, you know, governance and the importance of governance. And are we doing it well? And are we getting better at it? I think it was the last one there, you know, the evaluation, the lessons learned, the learned from experience. If we look at all project frameworks and methodologies, they always say at the end, you know, we do an evaluation, we do lessons, and we do it better next time round. This becomes crucial when we start to use quite sophisticated tools like AI, because where there's some mistakes, are there some things we can do better? And so it falls into that kind of natural, are we looking at improving as we're going through? Are we changing how we do things?
Yeah, and that gave us feedback about enterprise-wide adoption of AI in projects. Depends on how large the organization is too. But to your last point there, you know, go back and seeing, okay, what can we learn from how we use the AI? What went well? What didn't go so well? But actually sharing those use cases across the enterprise to say, hey, we used actually AI in this, and it saved us 60% of our time compared to previous, you know, times when we weren't using it. And so sharing those use cases across the organization is so important.
And of course, that's often then about, again, that acceptance, and people understand the benefit and the use as we go through. And it comes into this of, when we start looking at projects, as the slide says, projects are about change. This is about an organization meeting its strategy. This is an organization about going, how do I do those sorts of things? And so if I use the analogy, back when I first started working for ILX, you know, we need a framework and a methodology. Prior to that, project managers, often there wasn't a great deal of kind of control of what they did. They could almost do what they wanted. I'm not saying that project management was the kind of like the Wild West, but if there's no governance, then it can do what it likes. In one of the early organizations I worked for, it wasn't uncommon you'd get what's called a director's whim project. Why are we doing this? Because they want it. Is it part of strategy? No, they want it. And the organization didn't have the mechanisms in place to go, we shouldn't be doing these sorts of things. Whereas now, when you start to look at organizations, there is a legal requirement for organizations to have governance structures in place, to look at how they run the business as usual, but equally importantly, how they run projects, programs, the use of portfolio management to balance those things is part of governance structures. And this is kind of accepted in the kind of project management world, that these things are part of how we run our business.
Yeah, I think that's just important, you know, so by now there's generally accepted standards and frameworks and approaches in terms of how projects and programs should be run. They are nuanced and maybe tailored in different ways depending on industry and so on, but generally we accept that this is the way projects should be run. We're now at the point where there needs to be general acceptance about how we should use AI in projects and how it should be governed. And I like the first point there about projects are the primary mechanism for operationalizing an organization's strategy. You know, organizations have their strategic priorities that need to be addressed and achieved within a period of time. Many of my clients now have their 2030 strategic priorities. Now, most of the time, those strategic priorities are enabled through projects. And so if projects are using AI, fantastic. But we need to make sure that they are used in a well-governed way so that those people that are accountable to the board can not only give assurance that the priorities are being met, but they're done in the best way as well, using the available tools.
Yeah. And what's interesting is if you look at all of the kind of frameworks and methodologies for project management, they all say that at the start of the project, you should define how that project to be governed. You have a project management plan, a project initiation documentation, or an execution plan, or a charter. And all of these things are about governance. It's an expected part of, you know, why are we doing it? And then how are we doing it? And how we're doing it is governance. And the idea is to integrate all of the tools that we have for project management so they work for that particular project. The sense of tailoring, the sense of, you know, experience. What do we do around here? Can we learn better than we did last time round? all of these are natural parts of the project management planning process. And all we're saying is taking a step and saying, here's some new tools. Let's start bringing those things in, and let's think about this in a structured, orderly way, like we think about the rest of project or program management, and make sure we have those things in place. And of course, by thinking about that, we might start thinking organization-wide. So those, I think it was 12% of our audience said, yes, we're thinking about organization-wide. It is about, these are the tools we use. Therefore, we need some kind of structure for them. If we're I think it was 76% of people in our survey said, yeah, some people are doing it. Is that being used in an agreed, understood way? Have we got the buy-in and commitment, excuse me, of our team, of our sponsorship group, of our senior managers in understanding what we're doing and how we're doing it?
Yeah. And I think just give the audience some idea of practically what this means when we say building the governance within the project processes. So, for example, when you're planning a project, it's a good time to also create an AI assistance plan. Now, that could be a standalone document for a very large project, or it could be part of your project chart or your PID or whatever it might be, a heading that says AI assistance plan. Which tools are we going to use? How are we going to use them? And that creates more purposeful use of AI tools as well in the project. I worked with an organization, actually a university, who embedded the AI project governance framework across their programs and projects. And they found that in a pilot project, the governance actually resulted in increased use of AI because people were less reticent. It was much more purposeful. They planned it, they used the tools, they learned from it and iterated. And now their adoption of AI in projects is actually increasing.
And so it's that confidence of, there are some rules and regulations which I've got to adhere to, but because I can go down this path knowing that I'm doing it in the right kind of way. So there's a kind of confidence of having that framework, that governance framework in place that says, I can play in this area. This is the sorts of thing I could do, and this is what I need to monitor to make sure I'm doing it properly.
Yeah.
Now that's an interesting one, isn't it? That by putting governance in place, we get greater acceptance, we get better use.
Yeah.
And I guess that's almost that we want to know we're doing the right thing, and sometimes we're put off in using things in case we're doing the wrong thing. And by having governance in place, it's clear what the right thing is.
That's right.
Okay, if I move us on then, we're talking about the importance and the dealing with this. A good place to start here then is, why are we nervous about it? What are the risks of using AI? And talking as part of development of this, we talked about the analogy of cars. The faster the car, the more control systems we want. We want better brakes, we want better sight out of it, we want better suspension, and it's about control. And if you take it to its nth degree and you start to look at things like F1 cars, Formula One racing cars, the degree of control that they have to have in there and all the systems in place to make sure they're working exceed what we get in our normal day-to-day cars, fortunately. But as a quick question to the audience then, and if you can indicate by using the reaction button, thumb up or thumb down, how many of you today would be completely comfortable sitting in the back of a driverless car?
Oh, we're getting some thumbs up, Andy, but most of them are thumbs down.
Yeah. I'm probably part of that group as well, at least at the moment, because
we thought they'd be mostly thumbs down, but it generally is mostly. There's very few thumbs up there. Definitely mostly thumbs down.
And that is kind of almost what we're talking about here is that if we've got that system, if we've got that speed, but we haven't got that kind of control, how do we feel? And that's an interesting, just kind of quick reaction from the audience there. That kind of goes with that gut feeling that we were talking about. What's actually happening here.
And I think that's why many organizations are still very cautious around allowing people to use AI tools, because the governance structures aren't in place. They're not sure, they also know that these cars are getting faster and faster and more automated and so on, and almost become little black boxes where we don't know what's going on inside. And so, and this is the thing, that the tools are not going to slow down. No. All the big AI champions and creators, the various vendors in the West and East have decided it's a race, and these are just going to continue. And people don't want to lose out on the automation, but at the same time, you know, we don't want to wait for like a major catastrophe to happen, or a case study, an organization, company or organization ABC with this major case study of what went terribly wrong because they were using AI in their projects, and it just becomes embarrassing and a big mess.
Yeah.
And that's really why organizations are reticent and they're holding back. And they, you know, but again, in my experience, many of my clients will say, yeah, we're using Copilot, it's much safer, or we're using our enterprise GPT. Everyone can just use that. That's the governance box tick. Well, it is at enterprise level, but people are still not empowered to properly use AI in a governed way across the project lifecycle. And so these risks that you're sharing here tend to manifest in various ways.
Yes, and it does depend, of course, on the tool you're getting and where it's going to get its data from, because often the data is not just from your organization; it can be from the kind of the great wide world. And of course, if there's been some data entered or things put in there that are poor, then it will pick those up and use those as part of its kind of background. I saw this probably about 10 days ago. On a social media thing, is that somebody very proudly said, we've been using AI to prove that vaccines cause autism. And when somebody went back in their methodology, basically been feeding it lots of studies which have all been discredited and nothing else. And therefore, when AI looked at it, it looked at those studies and went, oh, look, it must. And you can disprove that. It's almost kind of a hallucination effect of, depends on where you get your data from, depends on the reliability of it. It depends on the accuracy, and that's where that kind of skewing sorts of comes in.
And this is the thing, you know, kind of really harnessing AI across the project portfolio in an organization. As you're saying, the tool is only as good as the data that it's given, and it's only as good as the users know how to use it, right? So, you know, how many organizations here are actually making available clean, accurate, reliable data available, which is lessons learned logs from previous projects, issue logs from previous projects, scope change logs from previous projects. So the AI tools can learn and understand generally what the trends have been, where the maybe blockers tend to be, and so that they can very quickly, you know, next time we start up a project, you can get some immediate guidance to say, look, this happened across the last 6 months worth of projects. These are the things you need to guard against. And so, you know, a big problem in many organizations is knowledge is not always retained. They're retained in individual people's heads. And so, you know, we don't have this information shared. But AI allows us to have this information now available, and we can process it easily. You don't have to go to find a lessons learned repository and then sift through it, because if you have the repository, you can just get your AI tool to go and filter through and say, okay, next time you run a marketing campaign for this region, these are the key things that happened last time. This is what you can do next time. So yeah, the data is equally important compared to some of these other aspects.
And interestingly, reflecting an old statement, I belong to the Chartered Institute of Personnel Development, and they said back in the noughties that this century is going to be about knowledge management. We're going to build lots of tools of communication for analysing those things. What it is what knowledge do we have, and where do we keep it, and how do we make it accessible, and are we using it properly? Which comes back to the whole point about data as an organisation, about access to that information. It's making it available. What AI allows us to do is get to it quicker and use it more responsibly, rather than, oh, I can't be able to look at all the filing cabinets and look for lessons from previous projects. The legwork is being done from us, but it's making sure that our data sources are reliable, that we're not using data that shouldn't be being used for certain things. So privacy and the rules around data regulation are going to be hugely important here to make sure we're not breaching those sorts of things. But if you've got the data quality and the availability, we start to get it. If we skew that, it makes things worse. And it's the lack of transparency one. I always think is an interesting one here. Is do we know what's going on inside that little box? Do we know what it's doing? And I guess that comes back down to the how we've defined we're going to use it and how we use it to work. We can set those parameters.
For sure.
So your point last of the capability, do we know how to use it? Have we been trained? Are we teaching ourselves? Are we learning? Becomes a hugely important part of this. Because if we're aware of the tool's capability, we use it to the best that we can. If we don't know what it does, then we won't ever use it. We won't ever reach that kind of capability.
Yeah, I mean, we've got 5 core values in the AI governance framework that you know about, and they really go a long way to addressing these and other risks, right? So the first value is accountability, which means regardless, maybe I use the AI to do 90% of the job, but I still have a full accountability, as in, like, in the end, I need to own that deliverable and make sure I check it completely. The second value is sensibility. Sensibility means applying your own common sense and intuition to that review process. And therefore, we can't have people that aren't experienced project managers to just use AI to do something and then expect to know what they're looking at, right? So you need to know what you're looking at, and that's where the sensibility value comes in. But then it's not only about control. The third value is collaboration. And what that means is, you know, if I'm going to delegate work to a human colleague, I need to explain it well, check their understanding, let them start doing the work, give feedback, and that's the whole thing. So that's how you do it with a human person. And the same thing when we collaborate with AI tools, we should apply the same approach. So collaboration is really important as a value. The third one is curiosity. And this is encouraging people to see how they can identify better use cases for AI. How can we speed up our project delivery or improve the administration nightmare on projects so we've got more time for stakeholder management? So that curiosity element. And the fifth one you've mentioned several times, Andy, because I know you're a big fan, is continuous improvement, that continuous review process, right? And again, on long projects, we can do this as an in-project review. At the end of projects, we can do it as part of the end review as well. And this is an interesting slide. I'll leave this with you, Andy.
I was going to say, taking their points there, taking those kind of principles of the AI governance framework, then it starts to look at, you know, why do we need a framework in the first place? Well, 8% of the project management roles could be run by AI if we know how to use it, if we're capable of using those tools effectively. Without that kind of guidance, we're going to be doing lots of things ourselves. We're doing lots of kind of the routine stuff, the mundane stuff. Which again, as you said earlier on, if we're not doing those things, it frees up our time to do the stakeholder engagement, to do with the transition management, the kind of hearts and minds stuff. Is our target audience ready for this change? Are they ready for the things we're going to go forward? And of course, continuous improvement, learning for ourselves about what we did better next time round. There are always going to be standards, increasing standards about data protection, about AI governance. So the EU AI Act and the ISO standards are starting to look at those sorts of things. Again, compliance. As an organization, do we comply with those sorts of things? Are we seen as a good supplier to other people? Do we use AI responsibly? Will be a major differentiator when people are trying to pick, you know, suppliers to work with, contractors to work with. And so having the framework here is a stepping stone for organizations to consider that kind of competitive advantage. This is not just a kind of nicety thing. This is going to be a kind of proper business thing at the end.
It's staying ahead, really, because, you know, those of you that are attending here today that are my and Andy's age, years ago, there was an Exxon scandal, and Arthur Andersen was the external consulting firm. It was a big mess. And basically out of that came this Sarbanes-Oxley requirement. Everyone had to be SOX compliant, and this was sort of government legislated and so on. And these things keep on happening over the years. Now AI is a big thing. So we have the EU AI Act. There's the North American Risk Management Framework for AI, not as a standard, but as a guideline. And we have the International Standards Organization. And in time, you will see with more attention being paid to governance, and I'm just seeing more and more now that is increasing. These will eventually turn into regulation where people will need to comply, and you will get audited against that. Now, when people wait to be told to do something, it just becomes a big mess, because then people are just scrambling to tick boxes and lose the value of the spirit of what we're trying to do here. The AI project governance framework is an easy way just to kind of get ahead of that, and embedding that within the project processes is not a separate thing to do. We just embed that as part of your standard project processes. And then you've got the governance there already, but not only the governance in terms of control, like I said earlier, better usage, increased usage, more curious usage. And that becomes, like you said there, a competitive differentiator.
Okay, let's step back to our group then. So, audience, we're going to do another poll here. What I'd like to consider is every use of AI in your organization's projects approved, transparent, traceable? Is it auditable? Etty's going to put that up. There should be one.
In the meantime, we've got some immediate feedback with some thumbs down.
Yeah. I think, Manny, we might take that as a no, those thumbs down.
Yeah, we've got some people saying here regularly. So we've got like
10%, just about. That's good. Yeah.
Which is great.
Which ties in with about 11% of organizations earlier on are regularly using AI. Now, that's an interesting correlation, I think. I'm hoping it's the same people.
Yeah, so we've got sometimes it's 40%, never 26%, don't know 22%. Yeah, so I would actually say I'm not surprised. I think this is typically what I've seen as well. How about you, Andy?
Yes, I think that in the experience of talking to people about AI and particularly about governance of AI, it's one of those things that people go, oh, I'm just using it. My sister-in-law uses Copilot quite a lot to help her role, and she mentioned to her boss who hadn't even thought of it. And so at that point, it's being talked about, but it's not really being, it's kind of approved because that's a good idea, it's clever, but it's not really auditable because she's doing it as an individual. So there's an interesting correlation there.
Have you seen shadow AI, Andy? So what I've seen as well is I'm looking at these results here, and the question is every use of AI in your organization's projects approved, transparent, and traceable, right? So some of my clients, people are told you can only use Copilot or you can only use the enterprise GPT. But these people, like in an open virtual training session, will say, yeah, we only do that. But then one-to-one with me, they're like, well, actually, I still use Claude, or I still use this on the side because what they've given me is rubbish and I prefer these other tools. So you're actually getting shadow AI is being used as well, which then takes away from the traceability. And we're not saying, I understand organizations need to address the gaps in whatever tool they've given to people and to say, right, okay, if it's not as good as you need it to be, let's see how we can make it better. So that you get more a better response to that poll, Andy.
And what's interesting is that what we're talking about is stakeholder engagement of the kind of project professionals that say, what tools do you need? What do you need help with? What would help with this? Rather than imposing a kind of blanket tool, it's to have a proper conversation, which allows you then put the right structures and framework in place, which, as you pressing the right button, should take us into this bright new world of we're using them properly, we use them effectively because they do the things we want. We're not trying to force them into corners where they don't do the best kind of role. And we probably use them much better. But I think the first one is always an interesting one, the ethical one. Are we using it in a way that adds value? Does it meet the ethics, the values of our organization? Because that's always an important element of, do we trust organizations? It's that ethical nature that is the thing that says yes or no in the end.
Yeah.
And I think that perhaps is a kind of important move just to move us forward. And taking what you were talking earlier on in terms of the principles, I always think that this is kind of one of the most crucial things that I've seen in the framework, which is the kind of human in the loop. The fact that it's the accountability principle that we have that oversight, we have that control over its use, and it's the appropriateness. And of course, this allows us to come back to make sure it's meeting ethical standards and we're using it in the most effective way possible.
Yeah, and organizations really need to get on top of this because the tools do become more and more automated and much more agentic. But some of the tools I use will actually, they are what we call explainable AI, XAI. So you can actually go onto its computer if you want to and watch what it's doing. So it, if it's going to give you a diagram or an evaluation of something, you can actually see the reasoning that it's gone through. That's what's called explainable AI. But in the end, if we need to audit what happened, we should be able to do that. And like you said, in the end, any deliverable that is created by an AI tool needs to be checked by a human. Even in 2 years' time, when things are even more automated, we still need to have those checks because, again, we understand context better. We understand certain stakeholders better, and nuanced ways of making decisions better. So I'm excited in the era that we're in because we can be so much better as project and program managers, focusing on the people side of things. But it doesn't mean that we need to lose grip on how well projects are properly planned and managed administratively.
And what's really important is that we're going to say this decision to be made, we have to be confident of that decision and know where it's come from. Because ultimately we're running the day-to-day as a project manager, or if you're a sponsor, is this still a viable project or program? Am I confident we're making the right decision? And having that traceability, having that kind of accountability becomes, well, I asked the question, where did it come from? So we start to look at the framework to try and drive this to make it forward. The important elements here, of course, are the principles. So the mindset, what do we believe, and then the how do we do it method.
Yeah, so basically the AI project governance framework has 6 elements. And as you can see, the way Andy's split them out there, the first 3 are to do with mindset, the principles, the core values, and the core behaviors. And then the method is through aims, activities, and deliverables. So the aims, activities, and deliverables really help people practically understand, going beyond policy statements, but practically understand how to embed AI governance within any type of project, whether you're running an agile project, a waterfall type project, and anything in between. The 3 principles, just for people to know, are really important because they form the foundation for the framework. And the 3 principles are human centricity, and I won't say more about that. We've said a lot about the human centricity principle, transparency, right? So that auditability thing, but also adaptability. So the framework is adaptable to context, meaning adaptable to the degree of AI use in the project and in the organization's projects, but also the degree of AI automation. And so as AI automation and adoption scales, the framework will adapt or needs to be adaptable to that scaled use.
Yes. And importantly, using then the method, we have the kind of the 3 steps of the method, the kind of foundation, activation, evaluation, which naturally link into the kind of project delivery frameworks, whichever one you have. How are we going to do it, doing it, and evaluating it.
Right.
Oh, projects have a start, middle, and end. Who knew? And it means, therefore, we think about integrating this in how we might do it, whatever our framework is, whatever our methodology is. It's about using the right tools and then using them appropriately. And of course, it's the important then of learning as we go through the continuous improvement.
Yeah, and for me, it's really important to make it like an easy thing to do, as in, people will be put off if another layer of governance is so much more work. Yes. This has been designed to easily integrate very sensibly into existing project approaches.
Yeah, and by doing that, of course, what we should get is much more buy-in, because it becomes part of the general planning process or initiation process for a project, which is just one more subject to think about. And interestingly, AI as a subject is actually going to link quite a number of the other things you think about. And so we always talk about integrated planning at the start of the project, planning all the aspects that will help us manage this project appropriately. And when you put it in those terms, the governance of framework governance for AI is part of that process. It's part of understanding those sorts of things.
Yeah.
Of course, organizationally, what we've got to consider is how much of this, where are we, where do we need to be? So we need a kind of competency framework. As all of these competency frameworks, 1 to 5. Quick walkthrough. This is about competence in AI use in governance in project management, not in general.
It's a capability maturity model, basically showing levels of maturity in how well AI use is governed in projects, right? So I'll start with level 1, ad hoc. Basically, what does ad hoc look like? We may be using AI in projects, but there's no governance, or there's no purposeful governance. So it's left up to individuals. It's very ad hoc. Most often people are using it. We might have shadow AI, and individuals might be doing some great work, but from a governance perspective, there isn't that traceability, human in the loop guarantee, ethical, efficient, and effective use is not evidenced, right? That's the ad hoc level. At level 2, initialized, now this is again as a reminder that we're not talking about AI adoption, we're talking about governance of AI in projects, right? So at the initialized level, it looks like people are starting to have these conversations. They understand that we need to have something in place. So basically they are initializing the AI governance need within their project environments. And so they start establishing some processes. Maybe even trial it out on a pilot project, maybe take the AI project governance framework and then trial it through a pilot project and see what works and what doesn't work, and then tailor it to their context. And that's a fair bit of work to get to level 3, which is the standardized level. Standardized looks like we now have a standard framework in place. We've perhaps taken the AI project governance framework, tailored it to our context, our types of projects, our project management frameworks as well. We've embedded it in that. It's not enterprise-wide yet, but within a function, within a department, within a region, we have the standardization, and people are now starting to work with it and seeing the benefits of it, and actually as a result increasing their use of AI in a purposeful way.
So one way to differentiate, 2 would be some project managers are doing AI governance as part of their project management plan or something like that. Level 3 is there's a group of it. It's been documented across an organization and it's being used. And then 4, everyone's using it.
Everyone's for it's enterprise wide. In other words, this is the way we do projects in this organization. And in fact, it doesn't have to be even the word AI does, because this is the way we do projects. This is our framework. Embedded in the framework is AI governance, and it's enterprise. And level 5, at that level, they are innovating and improving and become thought leaders in governance of AI in projects.
Yes.
I would say for any organization, if they strive to be at level 3, that's a really good place to be.
Yes.
Because you can build on that foundation to get to enterprise quite easily. But level 3 would be the challenge, and the priority to get to.
But in lots of ways, getting to level 3 starts to give you the real benefits of control, the real benefits of sharing information and that knowledge management and kind of that. Yes.
Yeah.
So that's all right.
And I would say you can't jump from level 1 to level 3. You first need to get to level 2. In other words, have those use cases and pilot.
Yes.
Yeah. Did you have a poll on this one, Andy?
I do indeed. Audience, dear audience, how would you score your organization's maturity AI governance in projects? 1 to 5. Is there some ad hoc use? Is there some? Let's have a look at what we're going to get now. Oh, now that's really
so 1 is ad hoc, 2 is initialized, 3 is standardized, 4 is enterprised, and 5 is optimized.
And unsurprisingly, nothing at 4 or 5.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. I think that's typically what I've seen as well. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, but I am heartened by the 17-18% of people at level 3 already. That's
really good.
Yeah,
which means you have a foundation to build on then to kind of, that's the way you kind of stay ahead, really. But those of you at level 1 and 2, I thank you for your honesty. And it's typically, that's really where most organizations are now, at 1 or 2, or in between, 1.5 or 2.5. And the time is now to kind of build the governance, get it in place, so that it just becomes not a thing to do under pressure.
Yeah. And it's making choices as an organization. It's deciding that actually this is going to be important to us. So yeah, I think those of you who tick the in level 3, it's 70%. It's not very many people, but it's 17%. I think there's definitely a kind of pat on the back that as organizations, we're making choices about these sorts of things.
Yeah, and those 5 organizations, again, it depends on how large they are. The bigger the organization, the more difficult it is. And sometimes in organizations, certainly in my clients, you have teams that kind of just get it. And those of you that are perhaps at level 3 or even 1 and 2, and you think about like, what does it look like when we get to level 3? That's where you also want to start together, putting together communities of practice. So, it's not like a thing that has to kind of be always pushed down from the top. So communities of practice where people like yourselves who are close to what's going on can really shape how AI is used across the project portfolio.
Which kind of neatly brings into who should understand about AI project governance and project governance framework. Those people who should be involved in the adoption and control of these sorts of governance frameworks. And it's quite a long list, Manny.
Yeah, and this is the thing, you have accountability at different levels. We have oversight roles, and people that I think some people here might be in PMO type roles. So if you're in a PMO or any type of oversight role, project sponsors, chief AI officers, even those that have these oversight roles that will be the custodians of your project management framework or your program management framework. This is for you because it's really kind of to understand how do you embed AI governance within your existing frameworks, assuming you have frameworks that are really at a level of maturity that work. If they're at a low level of maturity, your existing frameworks, this is also a great time to kind of bring the AI governance in and then mature both frameworks together. Of course, project and program delivery roles, because you are the ones that are delivering the projects and programs. And so it's up to you and your teams to ensure the governance is in place. You would be, once this is part of the organization culture, you could be asked at any point in time to indicate how certain decisions were made or how deliverables were created. And so but also, as I said, it's not only about control, it's also about curiosity, having those, getting those new use cases and better ways of using AI. So that's that one. And then governance, risk and compliance roles. So those that are going to be auditing how AI is used in the organization, particularly in projects and programs. So anyone that's going to be involved in auditing, evaluating, consulting, giving guidance for continuous improvement and so on.
And what's interesting is about both things like the PMO, strategic program offices, and those kind of compliance roles. Those roles are really good at spreading lessons across projects because they bump into projects and they take it. I used the analogy the other day talking to a group of they're like bees pollinating different flowers. They go from project to program to project to program and spreading those sorts of things. And that can be a really powerful way of getting buy-in understanding. So it's not about, big stick time. It's about encouragement. It's about improvement. And I think that's a really important way of considering these things.
And the governance and oversight roles have a perspective of what happens across the organization. So they have that broader perspective as well.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. What we've been talking about today very much comes from the AI Project Governance Framework book, which Manny is the author of. It is the basis of the framework and the methodology that goes with it. So this is something that's recommended to everybody who's going to study this. And these become the core elements of the courses that are available in this. Both foundation and practitioner are available, separate modules. You've got to do the foundation first, do the practitioner, do it jointly. It's available as a kind of live classroom, in a classroom. So do we run as a virtual one or run it face-to-face? Both of these are available. Lots more details on our website, ilxgroup.com. So please have a look for there. But interestingly, this is about the framework. And as we've been saying so far in this discussion, this is going to bump into lots of other bits of project management. So things about planning, monitoring, control, and value, managing portfolios, change management, hearts and minds, agile PM, agile projects and delivery methods. The AI tools can help you with all of these things. Do we understand the basics of what these elements are first, so we understand how AI can help us and kind of improve how we do those sorts of tools? So we need to have the basic understandings of those mechanisms so we can use the right tools in the right way. And
as well as the soft skills as well. I think you mentioned Alex, as these sort of the soft skills related training.
You mean this slide here, Manny? I better put that one up, haven't I? Absolutely, because AI can be used for stakeholder engagement. It can be used for communication. It can help you put together presentations. It can help you deal with how you might put social media together. All of these sorts of things it can be used for. So do we understand how to manage those relationships? Do we have the soft skills and therefore asking the right questions of our AI? And that's the most important thing, that when you're using an AI, it's what questions do you ask? How do you ask it to do things? Because it will tailor to do what you've asked. And so lots of ways, if we're asking the more intelligent questions because we have a better knowledge and understanding of that part of project management, we should get some better answers.
Absolutely. And speaking of questions, I'm very keen to see in the time available what questions we have from our audience, Andy.
Wow. As if it was scripted. Etty.
Right. We're actually, so far, no questions. You must have just covered everything.
No questions. Oh, sorry for rushing you there, Andy.
We have got time, so please do start popping your questions in the box if you do have any.
Yeah, we have just over 10 minutes. Any questions relating to the topic, please let us have your questions now.
And we've got one come in now. Oh, big one. Are you afraid that jobs will be lost as a result of AI?
Andy, do you want to go? Let me go first and then I'll tell you. So a very important question. It keeps on coming up. I am concerned because I know for sure many jobs will be lost there are common types of jobs, for example, people working in call centers and so on. So some jobs are more susceptible to replacement. They're happening already now and it will increase as it goes along. And therefore, I encourage all professionals to think about what you do and how you can future-proof your career. We talk about AI governance in projects. Because project management is such a people thing anyway, I feel that I'm not scared for project managers and related roles because I think generally they'll be okay as long as you stay ahead. So if you haven't caught up yet, catch up, keep up and stay ahead in terms of using AI. So either learn how to use it really well or control it really well to make sure that you are, don't keep on putting it off. Okay, I'll learn it when I've got some time. So the question was, are you afraid that it will take jobs? I've accepted that it will. And also I'm very keen on working with people to help them think about how they can pivot their roles to ensure that they stay ahead. So for example, in the framework, I see one important role as an AI coordinator, somebody who understands the organization's AI tools really well and making it available within the project environment. So we can have new jobs coming out, but it means each individual here needs to stay ahead on what's possible for them. Andy, do you have a short answer for that one as well?
Well, I think one of the best quotes about this is you're not going to lose your job to AI. You're going to use your job to somebody who can use AI.
Yeah.
And so we're moving from simple repetitive tasks to control of competitive tasks using other tools to go and do so. So actually, this gives you more time to think, more time to prepare, and it gives you more, if you like, challenging, interesting jobs. It's like if you look at manufacturing, they put robots in place. They got rid of all the kind of simple stuff that they could do quicker and faster. You still need people in there to control it to make sure it's going to work, it's doing the right kind of things, it doesn't have hallucination and go. And the same thing is going to apply to all of the jobs in project management. We still need to do these things, but we need to.
And I think that's the thing, because in project management, generally we regard these skills as knowledge workers. I feel that because you're knowledge workers, you should be able to pivot and continue in your career. In jobs, for example, Andy mentioned, on production lines, blue collar, those types of jobs where those become automated through machines, that person is not going to learn something else quite quickly. And those become at risk, and we need to be there to help them. But those, anyone working sort of as a knowledge worker whose work cannot be easily automated, you'd be okay, I'd say. But we need to have a duty of care for those around us who will for sure lose their jobs and will not easily, very quickly be able to learn a new skill.
Yes.
Anything else, Etty?
Yeah, we've had a couple more. So the next one is about how do you guard against the logic of because AI says so? So where outputs aren't necessarily scrutinized or objectively checked, how do you sort of guard against that?
Well, this comes back to the accountability and the data sources. So one, are you guarding your data sources? Have you got good data going in? It's like anything, garbage in, garbage out. So it's about making sure that you are using the right data sources, that you're protecting and maintaining those data sources. So another role that is mentioned in the framework is the data coordinator and a custodian to make sure that the data you have as an organization that your AI has access to is appropriate, up to date, is free from kind of weird hallucinations and those sorts of things. And that becomes a hugely important part of that. And therefore, again, the XAI, which explains itself, you can actually go back, where did it come from? You can validate the data, you can validate their thinking processes, and you go, yes.
Right. And if anyone in my team says the AI said so, which is the comment in the question, my immediate answer is, what do you say? Right? Yes. It's never a copy and paste exercise. If anyone brings me something that's clearly copy and pasted, I will send it back. But also, I want to know what you think. This, when you're using an AI to help you create something, it's a starting point. Either you've given it a draft and it's commented on your draft, or you're procrastinating and you just need it to help you get going, and so it starts your. And again, in time, these will become more automated. But really, those of you that are in those oversight roles, really make sure that you push back on these individuals and say, what would you have done? What do you think about it? What's missing here? People constantly share with me examples about somebody given like a dashboard report, which was AI generated, and it says the project's in an amber status, but everything else is green. So what's going on, right? And so how did we get to that? And so we need people to still have the skills so that they can use AI intelligently.
Yes, it's computer doesn't just say no. You've got to find out why it's saying no. Why? To quote Little Britain.
Great point. Next question says, what AI governance policies can be implemented to avoid cyber attacks? Do you have any recommendations around that?
Right. Okay. It's obviously this is bigger than what we're talking about here, but I went to a conference towards the end of last year in Edinburgh where they were talking just about that. And in fact, one of the speakers said this is the one thing that keeps him up at night is cybersecurity, because the problem is we will have nowadays we have supercomputers, but we have quantum computers. What it basically means is quantum computers combined with AI will make hacking capabilities so much more efficient and faster, and a lot of these will be, you know, AI driven hacks and that sort of stuff. So the question is about policy, is those of you that are in any sort of information security or cybersecurity role need to now make sure that you are always one step ahead, and that's not an easy thing. It's a full-time job, and that's what this chap was saying. You need an entire team, depending on the size of the organization, to understand where are we now, what's coming next month or next 6 months, and are we future-proofing? You know, don't worry about what's coming down the line in 2 years' time. It's evolving so fast. We need to stay ahead. And so, you know, the things that they do, like penetration tests and so on. So you asked, the question was about policy. You would have an information security policy. Make sure that that information security policy incorporates AI-driven attacks as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
And particularly protecting your data sources, protecting the data that you have as an organization.
Yeah. That makes complete sense. This is quite an interesting one. So someone said, obviously, as you've said, you think the repetitive tasks and that side of thing will become more automated and more done by AI. They gained all of their knowledge through doing these tasks and building up those skills. How do you see future generations still managing to have that knowledge with all of the automation that's coming around?
I love that question, because I'm still quite old-fashioned on that one, so I might have to be nudged. But I still say to people, you need to learn how to plan and manage projects without the AI first, so that you know what you're doing. Then let's bring in the AI and let it help automate things. Now, I know, for example, I have a calculator on my phone. I don't need to figure out 625 times 427,000. I can just put that in a calculator, but I know how it's done, right?
Yes.
And I would just say, because if in future generations we have people who don't know how to properly plan and manage projects, and then the AIs are literally pretty much just automating everything, that's when, you know, your job is not needed, if they're doing a great job. So if they're doing a great job, the job is not needed. Find something else to do. But we're not at that point yet, right? So future, how far is future? And the future could be a few months or a few years from now. But right now, we're not at that point. I don't see us being at that point by the end of this year, certainly, where the AI is that good that we don't know how to do it ourselves.
But if I use a simple analogy, when we're running project management courses, we still talk to people and kind of train people on, explain how things like network diagrams work and critical path analysis and how they feed into Gantt charts. Now, 95% of people are going to put the data into a planning tool like Project or ABT or NICU, and it's going to do it all for you. And nobody, you know, I'm just going to go look at the Gantt chart at the end. I don't know how it's done all those things. We're still going, understand how it gets that. So if it comes out the end, you go, that doesn't look right. You can go back and go, what was the mistake on the input? The same thing is true of AI. You're going to put data in, it's going to do some stuff. If you know what it's doing in the background, then when things come out that don't look right, accountability, you can go back and go, was there a mistake on the data entry? Is there some hallucination or some spurious data being fed in from somewhere else that says we've got something out the far end which is unexpected? And you need that background knowledge. We don't jump from there to here without having that kind of background knowledge. And so we're still doing that now. And but we've had planning tools for 30 years. So the same thing applies in AI.
Yeah, and there will come a time where we don't need to know about, people won't even understand how critical path is created. It doesn't matter because it's doing it and it's doing it correctly. But right now, we're still at the point where we need to know what we're looking at so that we can feed back to the AI, right? So we basically have a lot of baby AIs or teenage AIs that are learning from us. And we need to make sure that they learn well. Once they've learned it and they know it better than me, I'll be like, I'm going to stand back. I've got fun things to do.
I'm not sure I want to go through AI's teenage years.
No,
that sounds like a horrible
idea. Something we need.
Is there time for one more question, Etty?
Yes, we've got one more question. So this person has said that they are essentially a project team of one. How they're currently using AI to kind of help automate things themselves, but how do they go about approaching senior and execs to build in that actual official policy side of things? Do you have any?
If I could jump in, one of the things here is show them how you're using it and show them how it's worked and show how it's been helpful. It's kind of introduction by stealth. It gets you to move from 1 to 2 to 3. But if you show what bits you've done and what's worked so far, then they'll go, is there anything else this box can do? And you go, now you mentioned that. But if you do it that way, what you'll do is you'll build your way up, which comes back to Manny's point. If you can't jump from 1 to 3, you've got to do it in steps. introduction by stealth. What's working? Share it.
Oh, absolutely. I think that's because it tells the story, and it's a use case, and you've got a case study there. And then the question was about how do we convince senior managers about to build in this governance, and it's they understand risk. So I would say I took the initiative. Actually, I'm building governance. I'm using AI systems plan. It's in my risk thing. I'm doing. Before I did this, these are the risks we faced. But also, I'm a one-person project team here. If we do grow as an organization and scale, this is all in my head right now. We need to have it in a situation where we can actually then scale it to multiple people. And so, yeah, show them what you've done, make a case, and then future-proof it, take it into the future so they understand how it needs to grow.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Thank you so much, everyone. Like I said, we have run out of time, unfortunately. If you do have any questions, please do send them our way, and I'm sure Manny and Andy will happily answer them. We can get those sent over to you with some answers. Thanks again for joining. We hope you found it very useful. As mentioned, we will be sending an email with the link to the recording your way tomorrow. If you're interested in any of the courses we mentioned, whether it's the AI governance one, soft skills, or any of our other supporting project management courses, please do get in touch with your relationship manager if you have one, or if not, you can find out more on the website, which is ilxgroup.com. Thank you again, and we hope you have a lovely rest of your day.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.